this bill.
I call the member for Clark.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's my pleasure to second the bill moved by the member for Mayo, and I also implore the government and the opposition to support it. What the member for Mayo proposes, basically that gamblers are kept abreast of how much they have lost, very straightforward. It's a modest reform. It's technically very easy to implement, and I understand would cost very little to implement. In other words, it wouldn't be an impost on anyone. I suggest, Deputy Speaker, it would also complement quite well the commendable work done by the government so far. Bet Stop, the exclusion arrangements, is a good reform, as is the ban on credit card gambling, another good reform. But, Deputy Speaker, my praise for the government ends there, because none of this that the government has done, or if it was to support the member for Mayo's excellent idea, none of it will let the government off the hook, quite frankly, Deputy Speaker. It's now well over a year since the so-called Murphy report brought out its 169-page report, which contained 31 recommendations, and the government is still to respond to that report. And that is unforgivable, Deputy Speaker. That report provides an excellent blueprint for reform. It is the most comprehensive inquiry ever done in this country, certainly by any parliament, into gambling and gambling harm. And those 31 recommendations are an excellent blueprint, and they should be being rolled out right now. Instead, we will go to the election almost certainly with certainly no reform, but not even a response from the government to that report. And certainly no reform when it comes to the flagship recommendation of a complete ban on gambling advertising. And I'll tell you why, Deputy Speaker, there will be no movement in that space. It's because the government and the opposition, I would add, they're peas in a pod on this one. The government and the opposition are scared stiff of the gambling companies, are scared stiff of the media companies that pocket hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue from gambling advertising, and scared stiff of the major sporting codes, and in particular the AFL and the NRL, who between them pocket tens of millions of dollars each year from the gambling companies. Well, I say again, Deputy Speaker, I've said it elsewhere and I'll say it again here, this is the time for the government, with the support of the opposition, to step up and to stare down the media companies. Stare down the gambling companies, stare down the AFL, stare down the NRL, and instead to govern in the public interest. Because we know the single most significant reform that was proposed by Peter Murphy and her committee was a phased-in, complete ban on gambling advertising. But, Deputy Speaker, I'll end it there, circling back to the bill moved by the member for Mayo. A great idea, easy to implement, won't cost much, and ultimately it will help members of the community, and ultimately it will save lives. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, member.